What is up, Fisher Anderson? Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast.
Of course, Annabelle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I'll kick it off with the question that I ask all the guests on the show. It's what are you all about right now?
That's a great question. Right now, I'm all about my process. I've been really trying to refine my process just as my approach to football has kind of changed and gotten better over these past few months, and that has had a similar effect on my process spiritually. I don't think those things are too far disassociated from each other, as most people think, but process for sure.
Process. So when you say like process, what do you mean specifically?
As regards to football, how focused I am, like as like a horse when a horse is racing, how they wear blinders to kind of not be distracted by anything else. That is how I kind of equate my process to be like. It's how intentional am I being? That means when am I going to bed? When am I getting up in the morning? Am I planning out my meals? What am I eating when I'm eating? Am I early to meetings and practices? And am I doing not only rehab but prehab, injury prevention? And am I getting better at my strengths and attacking my weaknesses?
So I'm gonna send this to your coaches. They're gonna be like, "You win, captain," like all the things. But you're locked in for being really early in the spring summer. So that's awesome. That's a good thing to be all about.
Yeah.
Well, I did see that you might have another hobby, and I don't know if you're all about this at this exact moment, but you are a registered professional disc golf member. Can you like explain what this is? Because I am not very, I don't know too much about this.
Of course. So most people grow up hearing about golf, which I now refer to as ball golf. And now I've been exposed to, as of COVID, my sophomore year of high school, picked up a disc for the first time and started throwing it around when I was trying to be 6 feet away from other people, and had a blast doing that. Basically, it's like throwing a frisbee at a metal kind of chain basket. Rules of golf are otherwise identical. And me and my buddies, both of which were also going on to play D1 offensive line, we played so often after our workouts, we figured we might as well get real. So I signed up to be part of the Professional Disc Golf Association, PDGA. Entered into some tournaments, won a few bucks.
So you're like legit, like you've actually played and competed.
I've competed before, not at that, like in the recruiting process, I thought it was a huge deal. Every school I visited, I would play a round of disc golf. On all my OVs, I played with some of my coaches. That is way outside of the horse blinders, as I'm realizing now.
But you're not all about it right now, so it's okay.
No, it's still really fun though, and someday I'd like to play more often with my family or friends. But yeah, it's low on my list right now.
Yeah, that's hilarious. What's the disc golf community like? Like when you've gone to these competitions, like what's the vibe? Who's doing
Yeah,
that?
it's pretty crazy. I love my disc golf buddies. They're usually very open, kind of hippie like guys. Some examples that may help characterize the sport. In one of my first tournaments, I saw a guy smoking something off of a disc, and then he threw the disc right after that.
That checks out big time.
A lot of secondhand smoke at these open tournaments. Otherwise, super nice guys. I mean, they're just it's usually it's the cheaper version of ball golf, of real golf. So Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Well, I had to ask because I did see that, and it's like on the Stanford website. So, like,
Yeah.
you're no joke. That's like definitely locked and loaded on your resume for sure. But I had to ask because I've actually played disc golf before.
Mm.
I think we had it in my backyard like years ago, probably
Yeah.
honestly around the same time that you got into it during
Yeah.
COVID. I was so bad. So I'm never going to do that probably again in a competition because I could not figure it out. But I had to ask you about that. But I'd love to ask you a little bit more just about Stanford and
Yeah.
probably not why did you choose Stanford because I feel like that's self-explanatory, but
Yeah.
how did you end up at Stanford?
That's an interesting distinction between those two questions. I get the why a lot, not as much the how. So, how I had an awesome kind of recruiting process started my freshman year, and around my sophomore year, I had a coach reach out, and all these other guys, all these other kind of SEC, Big Ten schools are saying like, that come here. This is pre NIL. Come here. You're in whenever you want automatically. And then Stanford coach hit my line. He said, like, how would you like to fill out an application essay? And I was like, it's not really that attractive right now. And everyone else is it's making the path as easy as possible. And so I put that in my back pocket, kept kind of going through the process. And then later on, he reached back out when I had, I think, a better grasp of school. And a big part of how is my parents, two awesome parents. It's my mom's birthday today, actually.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, we called earlier. But anyway, two awesome parents that value education and had instilled that in me as well. And when we were coming back around to Stanford, I had to kind of do some research on my own. And, you look up any chart, it's at the top of the chart, and decided to give it a shot to come out here in person. So we took an official visit out here and just was blown away by the campus and the people specifically on campus. Super diverse, eclectic group. Some of the smartest people in the world are in my classes I go to every day in my freshman dorm and stuff like that. So it's an amazing place, and the how is maybe even cooler than the why. That's a good question.
That's awesome. And Stanford is a beautiful campus. I've been there so many times, and every time I'm like, this is just like a utopia, and it's
Yeah.
so cool. But you're from Tennessee, right? You're from Franklin,
Right.
Tennessee, and I actually
Yeah.
lived in Nashville for 2 years of my life.
Really?
So we probably crossed over. I did fourth and fifth grade there, CPA and Ensworth.
No
So
way.
yeah, yeah. So I was a lion and a tiger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but Tennessee is very different than Palo Alto. So how was that transition for you?
Yeah, I was actually just talking to my coach today. It's funny you ask about the view of the West Coast from the South, and kind of everyone looking up this way thinks there's like devil horns coming out of everybody that walks over here, and there's no light. And I had so many experiences at local gas station where I had some old lady would ask where I was going to school. I'd say Stanford, and she'd say my son goes to Samford,
Oh,
and I just kind of play along with it.
yeah.
And it's definitely different. I'd say, like you said, Stanford itself, the campus is a bubble. It is a utopia. It's like well manicured, like construction all the time. People, coming and plucking up weeds outside my dorm. If a single one grows.
Well, I think I heard like a bird chirping too earlier in the background. I was like, yeah, this checks out.
Yeah, I mean it's beautiful. I'm staring outside my window right now, but it's different. I'd say on the culture side, and especially like from a Christian background. A lot of the stuff I was hearing was like, well, they need you out there. You're going to be the only one following the Lord. And while it like there is a maybe a quarter truth to that, I don't think at all it's as people. It is it's not at all as it appears from the South, because when you're a Christian in California, specifically in the Bay, it takes effort, it takes intentionality, and as low level as persecution gets in the United States, you get it here. whereas in the South it's kind of absent. So I've seen a lot more of that, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed growing in my own faith and kind of doubling down on my own perspective here, while also being built up with so many different people around me that, think night and day differently than I do.
Yeah, I think that's great what you said just about like doubling down, because I think, at least for me too, like I've moved around, I've lived in a lot of places. I've lived in Seattle, Nashville, Indiana, Boston, and like how people choose to talk about faith and like think about faith is very different in all those cities. And kind of like you said, and I think the places where it's probably been most like not cool, or like there hasn't been like that sense of like, oh, this is kind of more normal in that way. Like actually those were the areas when it was like we all doubled down and my faith community was tight and we were like, we're sticking together and like I got you. And so I think that's what's cool just about kind of your story at Stanford too. And I would love to ask you just about the FCA and Athletes in Action, because I know you're a huge part of that, and Jim Black, the leader of that group, was the one who connected us. But what has that group meant to you just in your own Stanford experience?
Yeah, I think to understand that question, you'd have to go back in my life to growing up, and specifically in middle school. My mom, again, happy birthday, Mom. She was a FCA, has been an FCA volunteer her whole life. Well, my whole life, and kind of instilled that in my sister and I since the beginning. I was a FCA leader in middle school as much as you could be a leader there, and in high school as well. But again, in the South, like really solid, established community, plenty of support, overstaffed when needed. It was awesome. And then coming out here, I had met Jim on a visit, and kind of known like, okay, this is there's not even an official chaplain for our team. We're maybe the only team in college football that didn't have one of those yet. I'm praying that Jim can fill that role someday soon, but like he's the FCA leader. I'm going to become good friends with this guy. And sure enough, we did. Started meeting basically weekly as soon as I got here. And I remember those first few weeks sitting in the crowd at FCA and thinking, like, okay, these are going to be some of my best friends. It's where my athletics community and my faith community overlap, and this little overlap point is really strong. Really strong. And I've been a leader my whole life, and I remember sitting there thinking that first year, like, I want to really soak this up as a kind of third party person in the crowd, because I know someday I'm going to not be that way anymore. And sure enough, that next year, I was on a kind of leadership role. Last year was elected co-president, and we just did re-elections this year, and that will continue into my senior year. So, I've had a blast. Like, this is my first time really taking a community under my wing to as best as I can, and planning and praying for something intentionally, like it's the most important part of my life here, because on a spiritual scale, it really is. It's probably more important than any game I'll ever play, or any class I'll ever take. But like the eternities of the people in the room at FCA every Monday night, I actually can have an effect on them by putting them in the best position to be moved by the Holy Spirit or hear the gospel. And it's been an amazing experience this past year.
Well, now I know why they elected you multiple times in a row. And I hope that they get to hear this, because I think it's awesome when you know, like, the heart, and I'm sure they do because they elected you, but, like, know the heart of your leader. Mm-hmm. And just especially, too, like, you play Division I football at Stanford, a very amazing school where, like, a lot's going on, mm-hmm. and you're held to a very high standard. And so that's a lot to just add on to your schedule, number mm-hmm. one. So I would just love to know kind of, like, what about that group do you love walking into? Is it weekly meetings? Like, what does that look like? Yeah,
every Monday night we meet as a large group. We do some smaller Bible studies during the week that have kind of evolved on their own, which have been awesome. But specifically, Monday nights are usually the highlight of my week, because I get to see all of my closest friends at the same time. And there's, always a moment where we're worshiping, and, it's not much. It's just, we provide the worship. There's some really talented musicians in the athletic community, and, we're doing it and people are singing out, but just looking out around a room of the people that I interact with every day, it encourages me, because it every week kind of proves that past the previous perspective, the Southern perspective, wrong. As I look out and I see all these people that are glorifying the Lord, not only on Monday night, but also in their sport. And, similarly, when we see, I'd say there's a lot of room to grow in that regard on the football team in particular. I know some really solid team Bible studies that have provided that same encouragement in the past. When I hear about them, we've done some stuff like that in the past with football, but we're definitely still trying to make an established time to do that. I think maybe this is a segue. I'm not sure if you're going to talk about Coach Reich, but having a leader like the head coach of our football team, who is overqualified as a coach and offensive coordinator and as a man, also happened to be an ordained minister, things I couldn't have ever asked for. I think that is more encouraging than ever. The spiritual trajectory of our team, I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, no, I would love to ask you about that. Just baseline, regardless of who it is, it's hard to have a coaching change during your time at school, right? Regardless, it's just a hard thing. You got to learn a new system. You got to learn what's the new normal. What rules are okay? What doesn't fly? What flies? Especially even just in team meetings, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just love to know what has been that exciting part of just having a coaching switch, and what are you looking forward to with this season?
Yeah. I guess I would step back again for that question too. It's not necessarily new. It's my third head coach here, and he's an interim for 1 year. So I may have a fourth someday too. We can call again and talk about that. But similarly, as my technically fourth offensive line coach, been through a lot of change in my time here, and it's as much as it sucks to say for my class, it's kind of par for the course. And maybe not what we signed up for, but we learned in our first year, okay, this is what we're going to endure. And the guys that are here now, we've weathered the storm before, and we've, been through this before. We know what it takes, and we have all chosen to be here. That's the state of college football as it is. We've all made the conscious decision to stay and to be here, and that's a beautiful thing in itself. As far as the coaching goes in particular, it wasn't as big of a shocking change as you might think, just from the outside. It's basically like a plug and play fix that Coach Andrew Luck had overlapped with Coach Reich for 1 year previously, and he knew this guy can do a lot in 1 year, more than other coaches can do in 10. We're going to bring him in. And I've seen it already. The biggest difference is cultural maturity. He knows what he's talking about. He knows how to build up a program from the inside out, not just from, showy, flashy plays or bringing in big recruits. But it's his own standards and his own goals for us, and calling us to those things and holding us accountable to those things. That has really made the biggest difference. And so it's less of a huge kind of system shift as maybe it would have been otherwise, the previous change with the coaching offensive coordinator change. But his effect is much more kind of emotional, and stabilizing the rocking ship that we had last year, which will set us up well for success this year.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I love that you named Andrew Luck and that
Yeah.
relationship between them because I actually was a huge Andrew Luck fan. I lived in Indianapolis. My dad was on the Colts with Andrew. And so, spent some time with him there. And now we're excited to cheer him on at Stanford. And now Fisher Anderson at
Yeah.
Stanford, new fans of you both. But yeah, that's awesome. And just going back to what you said about the O line group and kind of what you guys have been through together in your class, is there a slogan or a phrase that your Stanford O-line group likes to get behind?
I'd say not as much my class in particular, but yes, the O line. We, for as long as I've been here, have called ourselves a union. Um, like any, specifically the tunnels workers union, like any tunnel worker in a big city does. They work all day in the dark and build the infrastructure for the city, and when it works out, they get no credit for it. And that's the role we've signed up for, and we know that, and we embrace it. And to that point, it's not a visible, tangible thing, but I've felt from the inside out that we've gotten closer as a unit, and enduring that change that instability makes stable guys, and hopefully that'll be evident this year on the field.
You said Tunnel Union. What was it? Tunnel Workers
Oh,
Union?
yeah, Tunnel Workers Union, TWU. We break out every kind of huddle we have with a big, woo woo union. And
I was like, is he going to do it? Is he going to break it down for us? I didn't know if it was TWU or what was it? It says woo Union.
yeah, it doesn't sound as good with just
Just us. We're bad at it. But if
yeah.
it's the O-line, then you're
You'll have to
good.
come to practice and listen, but it's fun. It's a good identity, or buying into the identity more than ever now. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's important too because you do play a position whereas like if your name's being said, it's probably not a good thing, right? Like something happened. And so it is a very humbling position, but at the end of the day, like you're what gets it done and you guys got to rally behind it because you're the first line of defense for that
Yeah.
offense. But I'd love to know just, looking back on your few years at Stanford so far, do you have a standout in-game memory that just makes you smile when you think about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. My freshman year, I found out I was traveling. I redshirted my freshman year. Found out I was traveling a few weeks into the season. Ended up on the bench at Oregon, and in front of a packed crowd. Got to go in the fourth quarter, and that was breathtaking. Like I remember that moment vividly. First snaps and thinking like, this is awesome. I want to do this for as long as I can. And then the year after that, probably my favorite game I've ever played in was beating Colorado, coming back 29-3 at halftime. That was just pure joy after that game, and was tweeted some things I probably shouldn't have.
Hey, it's all good. It happens.
And but I learned from that too. So it was a fun game though.
Was that, am I remembering, was that like one of the biggest comebacks or something like that? Or was
Yeah,
that another time? That was like one of the biggest comebacks in your guys, in Stanford's history?
in Stanford history, I think also in Pac-12 history. I think we were Pac-12 at that time.
That's wild. So what was just like when you think back to that moment and coming back in a huge game like that, what was the dialogue like, even just within the O line? What was that?
Yeah,
What was it feeling on the sideline? Like what was going on?
yeah. It was everyone convincing each other to believe, and um, belief in kind of the guys that we have on this team. And I think it was a microcosm of the whole season. What I guess what happens when you believe, even when things don't look your way, aren't going your way. It was also just having some really solid players on the team. Alec had an awesome game. And that was really fun to watch. Yeah, I remember in the locker room at halftime, getting guys to kind of lift their heads up and decide this is not how it's going to be. And obviously, the season didn't go as we had hoped it to, but I think that toughness and still the toughness that we're seeing with the guys that are on the team now could be characterized by that moment and plenty of other moments, but just like a refusal to lay down and turn over on your back when it would be easy to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's fun to win incredible games like that, but it also kind of like you said, like when you go through really tough things with your teammates, it brings you so close. Like I even remember like conditioning tests that I did with my teammates. I'm like, oh yeah, we're bonded for life after that. Like what we were saying to each other on the end line was like should not be repeated, and like also like I got you for life kind of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I love that, but I would just love to ask you because you talked a little bit about the hardness of that too, and just like the ebbs and flows of the season. How have you had to lean on your faith throughout your football career?
I think it's honestly changed. Like there's a time my first couple years where when things weren't going my way, I would chalk it all up to God and say, I trust you, and this is how you want it to be. And as the years have gone on, I think my perspective has shifted a little bit. I guess if I were to ask like my freshman year self, when you win or lose a game, whose fault is it? I'd say it's all God. Like, this morning, proverb of the day, you can prepare the horse for battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. That verse is very much true, but it kind of ends up, when that is all you think about, it ends up becoming a situation where if you win, it's all God, and if you lose, it's all your fault and none of God. And I found myself in that situation a lot in the past couple years. And I am very high on God's sovereignty, and I think He's never going to have us or me lose a game that none of us are capable of enduring. But I also now see like there's a lot stronger of a correlation from our team's actions and my own personal actions to the outcome of the game than I had thought. So it definitely helped those first couple years to have like an immense level of trust in God, and I want to keep that. But it's like a perfectly balanced scale or a perfectly balanced tension rod where you go too high on either side and the whole thing kind of unravels. But I feel like I've kind of in going through that gotten to a better point now. And this is a question I'd like to ask your dad, for instance, or Coach Reich or other guys that have done this at a really high level. I've gotten to a better point now of trusting God, you are sovereign over every step that I take, and also trusting myself. I have a direct input into the outcome of the game, and how I do and how my team does. And it's kind of like it's an exciting conclusion, because too much on this side, and it's like all the pressure is on you. If you make one misstep, you're out, your team's lost, it's all your fault. And all the pressure on this side, it's like almost too freeing. It's like, God, you've got it today. I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And I don't think God wants that at all. Like, I think He wants us stepping up and training really hard and, attacking our process and finding ways to refine that. And a way that I guess I'll finish that question by saying a way that that has helped me to think about that tension is the gospel. And I heard, actually, I think it was Jim, who said something about the excellence of the gospel deserving excellence in our actions. Like, how would the best salesperson in the world attack their job if they were just trying to get rich and whatnot? Somebody who's a believer who follows the King of Kings should have just as much passion, if not more, for their job, because the gospel deserves it. And I think the same is true for football. I saw all these guys around me with really refined process, attacking it with everything they have, with those horse blinders on, but they were just chasing, money or fame or girls. And I was thinking, like, how is my process how am I not attacking my sport with just as much passion if I am trying to, if I'm my ultimate coach is somebody way, way, way greater than Coach Shaw or Coach Taylor or Coach Reich, and that kind of helps me balance those two things in tension.
Yeah, that was like a sermon. That was
I
amazing.
know it was.
No, like not in a bad way. I think that was I learned a lot from you just there, but I think it's too like cool to hear how Jim's poured into you and like the
Yes.
impact that that's had on your life. But too, just like I think exactly what you're saying. I think that's a great tension in push and pull as like college athletes at all levels and like really anything you do. Like yes, there's a level of like understanding of like how the Lord is sovereign over all things, right? But then like you can't go to God and complain when like you're sitting on your butt. Like you can't like be like, God,
100%.
like why am
Yeah.
I not playing? Why is my team losing? It's like, well, are you working as hard as you can? Are you doing all things like for the as if you're working for the Lord? Then
Yeah.
like, right? And so I think that's been just a thing in my life, even with things that like I feel like I've complained about. Okay, well, maybe it's like, oh, like I'm not plugged in. Okay, well, have I gone to this group out all the time?
Yeah.
Like, have I made an effort? And so I think something that my dad would always say to me growing up and throughout college was just like, well, if I complained about, oh, we lost or I didn't play or this happened. Okay, well, did you give it your best effort? Like, was that your best that you could have done? Like, did you put all the extra work in? Did you do all that you could? And I was like, yeah, I did. He's like, then that's all you can do, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the freeing part that you're talking about. And yeah, you got to have those horse blinders on. Like, if you're going to say, okay, God, like, here's what I have to offer, like, I'm going to do my best so that you have something to work with. And I
Yeah.
even think this is something too that at least I saw in my life was like when you're in that waiting period of your life, whether you're coming back from an injury or you're gearing up for your season or you're in season and you're not playing, like what are you doing in that waiting time and what are you doing to prepare? Like having those horse blinders on, right? Like you're in your off season, you're about to go into training camp and like you got to get right so that like when the Lord is ready to use you and in big games and I don't know what team circled on your calendar this year, so I'd love to ask you that, but like how are you going to be ready for when the Lord wants to use you in those ways? So, I guess what team is circled on your calendar for this upcoming season?
A few of them. I mean, I get to play. We get to play against a lot of new teams. Second season in ACC. Also, I mean, great ads there. Great points about freedom. Thank you for saying that. But yeah, this season, I guess I'm like personally excited to play Duke and North Carolina. I think those are gonna be really fun games, just because I loved those two schools in high school. Those will be sweet games to win, and playing Clemson again will be fun. Getting some revenge on those guys. BYU, I've got a few friends. Some of my dearest friends just transferred there, so that'll be fun to play those guys and maybe pray with them before the game.
Before the game.
If I'm feeling nice.
No, I think that's a push and pull too, even just with sports. Is like I played a lot of my best friends and a lot of girls that I played growing up or even played through BC, and it's like that hard like how do I like show you that like I love
Yeah.
you and you're one of my best friends, but also like lock in front of like certain, the team and the coaches, and you don't want to look like your buddy, right before you're about to play. But I think that's an important thing is to be able to separate that. In the right moments for sure. But I didn't hear you say Boston College. Do you guys even play BC next year?
I think we do. That sounds right. I really should know our schedule better.
I don't know
But
if you play if because you're now in the ACC. I don't know if you play every ACC team.
yeah, I mean, there's more than 12, so we can't get to them all. And I don't, especially with our, being in our second year. I know we will at some point. I think we do this year, but if anything, like from that answer, there's not really one team. I guess I should rephrase that. From the beginning, Cal, that's the biggest game of the year, no matter what's going on. And it's especially important for me going into my senior year to beat those guys for the first time in my time here. And, before I came in, we were like, on some crazy streak, and we still have the rivalry in the bag. It's not an all time. They're not even close. But personally, in my time here, I need to be able to have some power when I graduate and talk to these
Yeah,
guys.
you do. You gotta win that one. That's a big one for sure. The in-state rivalries are huge. That's not something that you want to mess up, and you gotta get one of them in before you leave for sure. But
Yeah.
I do want to ask you. I saw you posted a video from a place that you were calling Prayer Property, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
What was that? I'd love to know more about that.
Yes. I'll go back again to answer that question.
I love the backstory, especially gives me
Yeah,
like the
I
whole.
feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I were to just say, "Oh, it's this place in the woods that I go to." But I found out about that place basically in high school, around when my faith started becoming a real part of my life. I was on Instagram one day and I saw Francis Chan's face pop up and say, "Hey, we're gonna buy this prayer property. We're raising funds for it." And I donated like $100. Put that away. Francis Chan had been a huge influence in my life that year, especially listening to his sermons, and he's an awesome guy. Anyway, I come out here. I have no idea that he coincidentally lives, a mile down the block from Stanford. Meet some guys by random chance on campus. Start going to a house church pastored by his son-in-law. And, a few weeks into that, about 2 years ago this week, some friends were going up to the prayer property to do some maintenance on it. They're building kind of like an Airbnb style house on a plot of land. It's basically on the side of a mountain in the Los Gatos Hills, about 30 minutes from here. 30 minutes to the base and then another 30 minutes up the mountain. And I got there and I was like, holy crap, I donated to this place like a year ago. I had no idea what it was. And now I'm here, and it's just it's a beautiful spot to get away from everything here. It's kind of like a reset point. I try to go once a quarter. And I've been able to take the offensive line up there a couple times recently, kind of like a getaway. And I plan on continuing to do that as long as I can.
That's awesome. What a fun, just thing that's available to you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Even if it's not 5 minutes away, but just cool that you can also bring your own line into that. And it's just cool. I loved hearing the backstory about that, but I had to ask because it seemed like such a cool experience and such a cool place. And I think that's even just a great piece of advice too for people that are still in college or going into college is it's so easy, especially when you're in a beautiful utopia like Stanford, right? To get in this bubble and you're it's just about my sport. I go to practice, go to lift, meetings, go to my dorm Saturdays, and then do it all again. You know what I mean? And so it's great to find those times, even if it's once a quarter or once a semester to get out and go. I even remember something for me that was huge when I was in Athletes in Action at Boston College. It was Maverick City is coming to Boston. Get it on the calendar. We're getting off campus, and we're going to this concert, and it's just little things like that I think are, even if it's once a semester, it's so important because it gets you outside of your bubble, but it also brings you into community with other people. So I had to ask about that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm
And
glad you did.
I'll wrap it up with the question I ask everybody at the end of these podcasts is, before games, do you wear headphones or no headphones?
Yeah, I do. I have a pregame playlist one for home games, one for away games that I've been adding to since middle school.
Since the same playlist since middle school?
Yeah, same play. It's changed a lot, but
Apple or Spotify?
a lot on Spotify.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's. And I'll send it to you if you need one. But it's pretty eclectic. There's one song, "Millionaire Waltz" by Queen. Listen to that every away game on the bus when I see the stadium.
Okay, so what's the reason for the away game versus home game? Because I've never heard of this.
Yeah, I don't really, just something I thought was really cool in middle school, I guess. And
You're I'm gonna keep it.
I never thought to change it. And I listened to it and with headphones for the game.
Is there one song that you've had since middle school? Is that the song you've had since middle school, or is there
Yeah.
it just completely changed?
It has changed. Like, you can see the trend of my life, spiritually and physically as those songs have changed, from classic rock to rap to worship to classical. Probably Millionaire Waltz would be the one that stayed consistent. I still enjoy listening to Queen, but yeah, it's changed a lot.
Wild. Okay, well, that's a first for the What's Up podcast, is the 2 different playlists. So I love that. And maybe I'll bring that into, I guess I keep thinking like, oh yeah, I'm like, I'm retired. Like, I don't get to play anymore. I actually signed up for a pickup league, around Boston. So here we go. Thank you. I needed that. But, you know what? It's still fun to cheer on my friends who are playing pro lacrosse and all those things. But seriously, Fisher, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was so fun. I'm excited to cheer on Stanford football and you this season. And just thank you so much for sharing your heart.
Of course. Thanks for having me. You asked great questions.